creative with your sourcing. Buying bulk buys is a great way to do that. Buying things that are replenishable is a great way to do that. This type of reselling business just doesn't scale in a linear fashion.
Hey, what's going on, loungers? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Mason T, and I'm a 20+ year importer and product developer. So I say this week in, week out, and what does that even mean? It basically means that I design and develop all of my own products. I only deal in replenishable products. I phase out the ones that are a miss, and I retain the ones that are a hit. And I've been doing this for 20+ years. Now, because all of my items are replenishable and repeatable sales, I don't have to just be an eBayer. I am on all sorts of the major platforms. In fact, the whole reason for eBay is where my stomping grounds is, where I test a lot of stuff until ultimately everything can be automated through places like Amazon FBA. Anyways, so today we're going to be talking specifically about AI, right? How AI is going to be affecting the reselling market right now. Okay, so I'm just going to throw this out there in the beginning, right? I did watch a couple of the recent videos by Commonwealth Flipper, and I saw what happened over there where he starts explaining that because of what he said, he has lost a chunk of subscribers. Okay, so essentially I'll give you the gist of it because I have the summaries of both of his scripts. And what happened is that, when people start saying, right, that they're worried about the crops are dwindling, meaning that a lot of people have some concerns about how AI is going to be affecting the reseller market. And you say something like, yeah, but there's still a lot of opportunities out there. I think you're missing the mark of the conversation. People are saying, yeah, the pie is getting smaller, so that is of concern. And you're just saying, yeah, but there's still a pie there. Now you're kind of glossing over people's feelings, and I could see why they were upset. And as a result of it, a lot of people, exited from the channel. So I'm here to put out my 2 cents, okay? I want to say that initially, during April 2nd, when Trump rolled out the whole, tariff war thing between US and China, I should have spoke up about it sooner, okay? Because my view on it was that it was just going to be posturing. And I was 100% correct about it. It's just, everybody's just flexing their muscle. Ultimately, that's bad business for everyone, for US to ignore China and China to ignore US. That doesn't work for anybody, especially all of the existing businesses. So during that time of clowning around, yes, a couple of businesses got hit, and I even featured it on my channel. But essentially, they have called a ceasefire for the 90 days, and now they finally signed something. So the whole tariff situation, it's going to be fine, exactly as I called it. So even though Commonwealth Flipper kind of saying people are fear mongering, don't worry about it, but I actually disagree with that. I think that there is legitimate concern when we're talking about the whole AI thing when it comes to this reseller space. And in order to get to that, we're just going to cut directly into the meat and potatoes. All right, so you guys already know there's no way I'm going to be touching on this topic without talking about BetterLister, which is TechNSports' new AI platform tool, okay? So here's the thing. I'm not going to criticize the tool in any way. Number one, I want to make very clear that I am not out here to block anybody's hustle. He's trying to do this. He's going to make money. I'm not against any of that stuff, okay? If it's a good tool, if it's helping people, if it's good information, it's well presented or whatever, absolutely do your thing, right? I argue the idea of stuff all the time. So I'm not here to review how good the tool is or whether or not it works. In fact, I would like to present my argument based on if tech's tool is perfect. Let's just say it works and it's perfect, okay? What happens then? That's what's mostly important about this. If you go over to these videos that tech has made about this item, whether it was the sneak peek or the demo, there's a lot of anticipation for this particular tool. A lot of people are really looking forward to it. There's a lot of pre-sign-ups. So you already know a lot of people are going to be jumping on this thing right away. Again, I'm not against that. The question is, what happens when everybody's on that platform? Okay, so if we're going to sum it up the shortest way possible, okay, at the end of the day, everybody on the eBay platform is kind of in a barroom brawl, right? Everybody is a competitor here. So I always found it very interesting of the eBay reseller community, because people are helpful to each other. There's Facebook groups, people help each other out on stuff. But ultimately, it's still a competitive field because everybody's just trying to sell their stuff first. So if you knew another reseller that wasn't doing very well, are you willing to give up your profits to help them? I think the answer for most of us is no, because if that was true, why bother with all of these videos about like how to get ahead of 99% of other sellers, how to be a top 1% of sellers, right? What is the purpose of all these videos and all these people clicking on these videos trying to climb their way to the top if it wasn't actually competitive in some way? Okay, so that being said, if this whole thing, metaphorically speaking, is pretty much like a barroom brawl, then a tool like this just weaponized everyone, didn't it? You guys just went from bare knuckles to weapons now, because now you could do a lot more. So one of the first criticisms that I have for this whole thing is that the whole reseller community itself is actually inherently cannibalistic. Ooh, I know that hurts. I'm very sorry, but it's absolutely true, because look, if everybody is collectively selling roughly the same bread and butter stuff, there's going to be a lot of overlap, and that overlap doesn't create any product differentiation for the customer. So what is left for the customer to decide between reseller A and reseller B other than who's got the lowest price? Because if you're going to end up getting the same thing anyways, why would you pay more for it? So there might be people who argue, okay, look, there's seller A is better than seller B in some way. He ships stuff faster, or he has better customer service, et cetera, all these things. But look, if we're being completely serious here and honest about what's going on, everybody came to fight, right? There is no reason why anybody is incentivized to be a below average seller or a failing seller. Everybody is incentivized to be a reasonable seller, a compliant seller. I'm sure everybody who's watching this video right now is either above standard or top rated, because that's the least that you can do. You came to do this seriously, didn't you? So to argue, one seller over another, everybody is pretty much, 99%, 100%, 98%, 97%. And I really don't feel for the same pair of Levi's 501 jeans, if somebody offered it $3 less, somebody's going to care about, well, this guy is 100% and this guy is 97%. They're both very, very compliant sellers. It's good enough. So now, what is the argument exactly, right? It comes from the track record of what drop shipping is. You got to think about the track record of how it happened over at that space and how it might happen over into the reseller space. So what I mean by this is, how does drop shipping even work, right? The main drop shipper warehouse itself sends out all of these photos to all of these would-be drop shippers. So they all have the exact same photos. Now, there's only so many ways you can title an item. So essentially, their titles might be a little bit different, a little bit nuanced, but essentially, the main keywords, if you put it in, all their stuff is pretty much going to show up. So the moment that you type in something that is going to show up those items, you'll probably get like 8 to 10 listings of the exact same thing. And they're all the exact same thing, because even though while some of them don't share the exact same thumbnail because they might switch it up a little bit, but if you have them all opened up and you're comparing, they all share the same lot of photos. So ultimately, that they're all going to show up from the exact same drop shipping warehouse. So what does it matter which drop shipper that you buy it from? You're going to get the same item at the same transit time. So you might as well, click on that lowest price available first, and then just shop by lowest price. Because if you're going to buy the same thing, no matter what, then why would you pay extra for it? Okay. So coming back to this better lister tool, we got to think about what's going to happen here. Essentially, these things are algorithms. And if I had to give you the easiest first grade definition of exactly what an algorithm even is, it's just a set of rules. It's like a recipe, how to make a lasagna, how to bake some cookies, follow these steps. That's what an algorithm essentially is for any computer software. So the AI is going to follow a set of rules. And for the set of rules, we're following a format of how to create titles. And the title is going to be what? The brand, the model number, followed by its descriptors. You see exactly in the demo that Tech put out for whether it was the Tommy Bahama shirt or any other item that came afterwards, it just showed the brand, the model, and then the descriptors afterwards. So you're going to get very, very similar, if not exactly the same. I can't even use the word cookie cutter. It's literally a clone title every single time. And it's going to basically work like this. The AI is going to look at the photo and then use some kind of Google Lens type of API to try to look up exactly what this item might be. And then from there, generate the title. And titles help to generate what the description is because we already have that. If you want to generate an AI description, the AI will say, put in the title, and then based on the title, it'll try their best to make a description for you. And then from there, as well as item specifics and possibly some kind of suggested price. So the whole mechanics of this thing, we already understand pretty much how it's going to work. It's about the results. What is it going to start spitting out to people? I speculate that what happens is that when you get a Tommy Bahama shirt and you get a Tommy Bahama shirt and you see what I'm saying? You're all going to get the exact same title. Now, of course, it's going to create a draft of this and you could go ahead and proofread this thing and edit it however you like. Absolutely. But I argue that if you have to do that, then that kind of defeats the purpose of spending money to increase your input, right? Because the whole point is so that like you could go from sourcing 30 items a day into 100 items a day. So if I have to keep coming back and then every single time it generated the title, I have to rework the title, then I slow down the whole process, thus defeating the whole point of this. Okay. Now, the next point that I have to make is that we have to think about how this changes the landscape of eBay itself. Because look, as we have more people able to list more things, one problem still remains, which is reselling items and putting up more reseller type listings doesn't necessarily increase the demand significantly. Just because there are more resellers out there doing reselling, is that going to increase the foot traffic somehow? The foot traffic has to be increased by the platform, right? Or there has to be some hype that's created. And all the hype and all of the demand is already created by the original private labeler of this item. Okay. So resellers don't do that. So if you put up more and you put up more and you put up more, now we're just all still slicing the same pie. So is it dwindling? Maybe it's not exactly dwindling, but if more resellers are involved and every single reseller is weaponized, now it could absolutely feel like it's dwindling. So when people had this concern of like, they're very worried about how the AI is going to change the landscape of what reselling is, I feel as if their concerns are 100% justified and it should not have been glossed over as some form of fear mongering. You see what I'm saying? Because ultimately we still have to worry about exactly how eBay feels about all of these overlapping listings. Is it concerned that this might add a little bit too much clutter and duplicate listings to the platform and thus resulting in less foot traffic? That would bother eBay very, very much, right? And if that happens, then they will do something to definitely crack down on this type of behavior. I can't say right now exactly what the solution would be, but they would look into it. They would absolutely act on it. They're not just going to let the foot traffic dwindle and not do anything about it and sit idly by, right? So the other one is if this actually increases the foot traffic for some reason, then, kudos. And I was 100% wrong in my assessment. And the reselling market is going to keep growing and, lovely to that. But the way I see it right now is that if everybody is already competitive and then we put out this tool, then we just made everybody else, even more cutthroat than it was before. It has to be, right? So there's this video that Tech put out about 3 weeks ago, which I thought the timing of it is actually perfect in retrospect, thinking about how he launched the AI platform afterwards, because I thought this piece of advice was very strange and he tries to justify it in this video. So as always, I disagree with most of what Tech says, because once you start crunching the physics, the mechanics of stuff, the math doesn't math very often, okay? And I'll tell you what I mean real soon. So I'm just gonna go ahead and throw up a bunch of bullet points of basically what this video was originally about. So the video was titled as, a race to scale, where he argues it's not a race to a bottom, it's a race to volume. So lowering the prices is not going to save you. The scaling your operations will. Now, normally I do agree with this type of advice, except being a reseller is very labor intensive. So there is a physical ceiling here, and we need to overcome this somehow. And the answer is not 120 a day, right? So resellers are getting squeezed on all fronts. So thrift stores are raising their prices, eBay is raising their prices, the promotions are raising their prices, as well as USPS raising their prices. So you're getting squeezed on all fronts, right? And basically, because the margins are shrinking everywhere, the only viable way to maintain or grow your income is to sell more, meaning larger stores, higher throughput, and tighter operations over here. Now, normally I kind of sort of would agree with this, but still though, it's about the way you're going to scale the volume. So when you say you have to do more volume, I'm going to hit you back with the how. And if you don't give me a good answer on the how, then I'm going to call a little bit BS on the radar, right? So achieving scale reduces your per unit cost in every category. Sourcing, storage, labor, and listing. That's how big businesses win. And, it's how serious resellers will survive. Okay. There is some truth to this. However, the way that he put it out there, I found not only comical, but insulting, well, all at the same time. So he gets into, doing listings, like if you hired a VA or an employee doing listings, as well as your storage space, as well as your cost of goods, right? So when he gets into the cost of goods, he's trying to say that, like, if you could pay less for the amount, then you could buy more things, and therefore lowering the cost of goods is going to help you do more volume, as if you're already overpaying for everything that you source, right? So the question again, if you are already at your optimum over here, you're already paying very good prices. If you're already buying pallets and sourcing things by weight, how do we lower the cost of goods like even more here? I want to hear the how. Don't just tell me that the issue is that you have to lower the cost of goods. Go figure it out. We don't go to college to just listen to the why and not listen to the how, right? The how is much more important. The application, how to apply this in real life, is what's really important here. So now, once we get into the storage part is really funny. So basically, he's trying to say that if you got X amount of goods in the storage, if you could double the amount of goods that you are holding in the storage, then you would be paying half the amount for storage per unit of items and stuff like that, right? As if to say that whatever you're doing with your storage unit or your current storage space right now is not already at optimum settings, right? So if your storage unit is already at 1,000 pieces of items inside, he's trying to say, well, if you could shove 2,000 in there, as if you're not already using up all the storage space. So this would suggest that people are getting storage locker after storage locker and being very wasteful with their stuff, right? As well as when he gets into talking about, the employees, he's trying to explain that, okay, if you have an employee that is doing 100 listings for you for X amount of dollars, but if they could do 200 listings for you, then you would be paying half of what you were paying them before, because you're getting double the output, as if your employee is super lazy and they're not already doing as much as they should be doing, right? Because if they weren't, then you would have been fired them already. So this is what I mean. A lot of these pieces of advice, when you do the inverse logic to it, the math doesn't math. I think the most hysterical portion of the video was the whole garage stuff, okay? So he gets into this whole garage parking lot thing, and I'm just going to keep that one short because I could go into a long critique. If you want to hear a whole long critique about it, I'll do it. Leave it in the comment. I'll do it. If not, then the short answer is this, okay? Essentially, when he talked about the parking lot thing, look, you are using an analogy of short-term rental property to explain tangible goods, selling tangible goods. And that just doesn't add up. It doesn't work at all, okay? Because every single car that comes into your parking lot is money, while every single item that comes into your warehouse, it's not money. Items that's sold from the warehouse, when it leaves, that's when it turns into money. So one comes in is money, one goes out is money. So the whole analogy, it doesn't work. Now, some people might, again, argue that his overarching, fundamental message about business is there. Yeah, okay, fine. I kind of sort of give you that, but there is a problem when you put it into education and trying to teach people. You should have just went with a better example to lead with, to begin with, rather than put out a bad example of something and then have to explain the nuances and exceptions to somebody who's just trying to learn business from the basics. You see what I'm saying? It would have been better if you just chose a better example to begin with, and Pegasus will not nitpick on you. You know what I mean? Okay, so inventory control is leverage. When you source in bulk or build supplier relationships, you can negotiate prices and create predictable buying power, right? Whatever happened to, not beating people up on the price? Like it's kind of conflicting, you know what I mean? Like, I agree with what he's saying, and then he says other things in other videos. So the reselling landscape is changing fast. Sellers who don't adapt by building efficient, high volume systems will struggle to stay profitable as the business becomes more demanding. Okay, I feel as if this is very convenient, right? Because then you put out this AI tool that helps you do more scaling, and you put two and two together, it works out perfectly. But again, we come back to talking about what's going to happen when everybody is armed in a bar fight. All right, so let's talk about some positive advice, okay? I found this from Justin Resells, and I really want you to hear what the man has to say.
Tanya asks, if you went full-time, what would your full-time listings look like, from 5 a day to what? Good question, Tanya. I don't think I would ever go full-time on reselling. I need variety in my life. And as much as I love reselling, I think I would burn out if I was doing nothing but that for a career. And so I like keeping it as a side hustle type situation. What would your full-time listings look like from 5 a day to what? Like, it would definitely have to increase, right? Doing 5 a day is not going to get you full-time income, most likely. But you have to keep in mind, it's not just about listing like or it's not just about increasing your listing volume. You also have to increase your sourcing volume, right? And most people that look to go full-time here, they're going to hit a wall, because as an individual, you can only go out and source new inventory so much. You can only go to so many thrift stores or garage sales. You can only get as much inventory via that. And you're going to have to, if you want to go full-time with this, you likely have to get more creative with your sourcing. Buying bulk buys is a great way to do that. Buying things that are replenishable is a great way to do that. This type of reselling business just doesn't scale in a linear fashion. It's not as easy as saying like, okay, I'm gonna switch from 5 a day to 10 a day and my sales are gonna double. It doesn't work that way. They're gonna go up, but they're probably not gonna double. And so, I think a big reason is just there's so much variety and there's so many variables at play that determine how much you sell and how quickly you sell it. It's really hard. And so but to answer your question, if I went full time, I think if I were going full time, I would need to have a sourcing plan and a listing plan that went from 5 a day all the way up to probably 25 to 30 a day, I would say. That's probably where I'd try to shoot for.
I love what he has to say. Now you guys know why I give Justin Resells a pass, because I can't hate on a guy who's telling the truth, who's telling it like it is. That is absolutely telling it like it is, right? It doesn't scale linearly, and it's not like just because you go from 5 a day to 10 a day, you're just going to start doubling your sales. That's not how it works. The whole idea of reselling is so that we're just going to list as many as we can, and statistically, we're going to be able to move more than if we listed less. That's pretty much all you got there. And then hopefully you sourced good items. And if you didn't source good items, then it comes back to blaming the original person, right? Saying that, well, your stuff just isn't quality. So this comes back to me talking exactly about what the issue of a whole bunch of resellers piling on a bunch of overlap items is, right? So if you just increase the supply without increasing the demand, doesn't that inherently lower the STR of even quality items? Because even if it's a quality item, suddenly a rare item is not so rare of an item because a lot of people are able to source more stuff, go through more stuff, list more stuff. So, you know, before somebody might be a little bit more hesitant about buying up a lot of things, but now with the lister tool that I could just go ahead and then do a lot of things, people don't have death piles to hold them back anymore. Then what happens now? So this is exactly what the issue is and kind of sort of my prediction of what might happen in the future. So I kind of worry about this particular space. So I don't want to just do critique videos without offering actionable steps and practical advice. But as you guys already know, on this channel, my message has always remained consistent. Move towards replenishable items. I'm always going to encourage people and empower people in this direction because that's how you leverage true automation. When you think about how eBay, Amazon, like all these platforms work, they're on 24/7. So without a replenishable product, there's no way you could wake up the next morning with 6, 7, or 8 sales in your sleep. So in this particular context, however, it's more about the exclusivity than anything else. You don't want to have so much overlap items with everyone else because there's nothing else to it other than a race to the bottom with competing for prices because buyers are not incentivized to shop any other way other than, okay, there's 50 sellers with the exact same item because they're all AI generated and they're all going to be the same titles. I'm just going to go ahead and click sort by price now. Now, here's the thing on this channel, okay? If you are very green and trying your hand at business, okay, then you know what? Maybe you should go look for TechNSports and he will give you, you know, how to sign up for an account and, you know, all these basic stuff and how to take some photos and things like that. But if you are already at your wit's end, or if you are already optimized already, okay, you have a whole bunch of goods and you've done reselling for long enough, I will teach you how to go from walking to flying. However, what I can't do for you is just magically tell you what to sell. That doesn't work. Essentially, everybody lives in different places in the United States, and therefore you're going to be able to source different things. So in the beginning, everybody is essentially going to be some kind of an everything seller. And what I want you to do is start there first until you can notice consistently you're able to get something over and over again, and you're able to sell that same item over and over again. That is your success item that you could double down on. And I'm going to show you the perfect example in just a moment. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that what bridges the gap from a reseller over to where I am as a private labeler, I believe it's in semi-replenishable listings, meaning that, okay, at first, I'm probably not going to be able to get a supply as consistent as dealing with a factory like how I am. But I am able to source certain things that I could consistently get every now and then sporadically. So I will change my back settings so that the listing doesn't end just because it's sold out. That way, whenever I can replenish this item, I will go ahead and replenish this item so that the listing doesn't start from scratch. That is the homework that I would like for you guys to think about and start moving towards. So I've been really wanting to do this special segment about one of Joe's listings, all right? So we're just gonna do a little bit of search right here. So I'm just gonna type in the word used and then Nintendo Wiimote over here, right? And then we're just gonna go ahead and hit enter. And I wanted you guys to see something very, very interesting, right? Which is over here, you see it says sponsored, 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 sponsored. So these are the first 4 slots of the sponsored listings. As I have explained in the past, what happens when you are trying to use promoted sponsored listings is that you are fighting for one of these 4 positions at any given time. So when eBay suggests to you that, hey, you should put it at 7%, you should put it at 11%, you need to put it at that percentage or higher for you to get a chance at one of these spots at the top spots. That way you have a chance on being on page one. But anything after these first 4 slots is the #1 ranked listing. So when I scroll down just a little bit over here, lo and behold, who has the #1 ranked listing here? So I'm just going to go ahead and click on this one, and you can see that it is Joe & Co. This is Joe's listing. It is the #1 listing on eBay. So I don't want to hear a bunch of smack talk about like being the #1 men's seller of clothes. Who cares about that? Having the #1 listing on autopilot is a whole different ball game where it's a lot less about elbow grease and way more about strategy. So let's talk about this one for a little bit, because the thing is, we will be having Joe on the show, and I'm going to ask him a couple of tough questions. And some of the tough questions is that I'm curious to know if he is still running sponsored ads on this. I don't think he has to as much, because he's going to be the #1 listing right below, right below like all the sponsor stuff. So #5 is always going to be him. So #5 in organic is #1. Keep that in mind. So we're going to show you over here that the as far as the revisions goes, okay, if I click on this, Joe's had this since 2025, January 6th of 2025, right? So what does that mean? It means that he hasn't been growing this listing for as long as people think that he has, right? And when you look through what has happened here, you can see that Joe has what? Updated the quantity, a little bit of the price, updated the quality, changed the shipping terms, updated the quantity. So it's very unlike most listings where it just says sale start, sale end, sale start, sale end. He's not doing that here. This is just all consistency in sales. So the reason for this segment is that there are other aspects that AI could be involved that would really help us with our business when you have such a good listing that you grew from a sapling into a tree over here. So I do have other questions for Joe when he does come on the show, such as I would like to know how many Wiimotes he was selling in the beginning of his journey, like, you know, the first or second week, versus how many he was selling maybe 2 or 3 months into the business. I'm not going to ask him how many is he selling right now, because I think that's a little too personal, but I would like to hear the difference between the first week and the 6th week and the 8th week afterwards, you know, because as this thing is building up more momentum to now today, he has a #1 listing. This is worth us really, really throwing the kitchen sink and nurturing it. Of course, because he's doing a used item, we probably don't want to over embellish too much on the photos. But when we scroll down over here, this is what Joe's current description looks like, which is your typical description because you just want to make a good enough listing, because Joe still has so much more other work to do and so many other things to get rid of and to sell and stuff. So what I did for him is that I've shown this in a previous episode before I recommend the Wizo to make, like, you know, simple templates and stuff. So I put together some code over here, and I did have AI brush it up for me and until I thought it was correct. And then I copied and pasted it over. So I sent him a little HTML file, and I just wanted to show you guys what it would look like. So had he used my HTML file, I don't think he's got it around to it yet. It's up to him if he's comfortable using it or not, you know what I mean? No pressure, Joe. But this is what his listing could look like if he put in the HTML code over here, right? And this is what I put together for him. So I also want to blow this up, and I want to show you guys as we inspect the element like so. And I click on this, right? This is for an iPhone 14 Pro Max. So this is what the listing would look like on the mobile phone. So what this HTML is a dynamic HTML that will shift the way you saw it before when it's on desktop versus what it looks like on mobile. So when I come back over here and I show you guys the preview to this again, and then we bring it back like this, and let me get out of that. Right, this is what his description could look like. So just to give you a little rough idea, I originally wrote some code first like this, and then I wanted the ChatGPT to go ahead and look it over and then make a whole bunch of suggestions for corrections. And then you can see my reply over here. I say, okay, give me the full HTML and show me your corrections. And then this is the full HTML like this. And then there's a copy button over here that we copy and then paste and then hit the preview to see what our listing would look like. And that would help properly nurture our listing for a better product description. All right, guys, so let's do a little bit of final thoughts here. So with the landscape rapidly changing and the possibility of this kind of bar fight, brawl, apocalypse possibly happening, I only see two methods forward in order to completely avoid the situation. One, you could do exactly what I'm doing, which is the idea of private labeling. You are creating something, a unique item of your own. You have a unique offering that you're putting online, whether you are creating it yourself or you're getting it done by factories like myself. I know that not everybody is ready for that, not necessarily, not just yet, but that is one method forward. The other one is to have higher visibility than somebody else does, so that just because you're a top-rated seller and I'm a top-rated seller, but what you didn't do is plant those saplings and nurture them into a tree like how Joe did. Now, I want to be crystal clear. Do not copy Joe word for word, step by step in a cookie cutter type of fashion. That would be suicide. Joe has been doing this for quite some time, so therefore he already knows how to price it competitively. For you to claw your way to the top right next to him, most likely you would probably have to lose a lot of money in order to do so, either by offering it far cheaper than him, as well as sponsored listings where you're going to lose a lot of margins as well. And even then, you would only be able to share in the market with him, as opposed to where he is right now, just dominating the market. I think what's very important to learn about this is to not be dissuaded nor feel intimidated by what Joe's success is, because ultimately he's only had the listing for about 6 months. This means that there is time for you to go ahead, be an everything seller, figure out your item to double down, triple down on, and then start growing that listing into a high ranking listing so that you have the better visibility, so that when the time comes, you have those semi-replenishable listings that's going to keep you afloat during the tougher times, until you could finally start getting into a more private label area where everything is automated and created and produced by a factory, as well as automating your sales so that you don't have to worry about situations like this as much anymore. And then AI's help for you is more about revising and refining your listings rather than just spitting out rapid fire listings and trying to scale in a linear fashion that is very difficult to do. Anyways, guys, that is the video. If you enjoyed that, please give it a big like. And if you learned something, please consider subscribing. As always, I'll see you guys in the next. Take care.